Attachment styles are not permanent identities. They're patterns, and patterns can change. People with secure attachment were people that were loved well, were responded well when they were children. Anxious attachment style, and these are people that often carry a deep fear of being abandoned in relationships. The avoidant attachment, they feel uncomfortable with too much closeness. They value their own independence. They even pride themselves on being self-sufficient. They can handle things on their own, and they don't need anyone. Welcome to the Rise and Rebuild podcast, where we break unhealthy cycles, heal what still hurts, and rebuild. If you're a woman of color, a firstborn daughter, a single woman, or a single mother, this is your space to finally breathe again. Hey, my friend, welcome back to another episode of the Rise and Rebuild podcast. This is your host, Lydia, and I'm so glad you tuned in today. How are you doing, my friend? I hope the good Lord has kept you well. He has been so good to me, and I'm always thankful for that. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're returning, thank you for coming back and continuing to walk this journey with me and with the women in the community. So if you've not subscribed yet, go ahead and please hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode. All right. So today we will jump right into what we are talking about. And it is something that's completely changed how I understand myself and my relationships. So today we are talking about attachment styles, or simply why you love the way you do. Because a lot of women think their relationship struggles are mostly about choosing the wrong partner, but sometimes really there is something else going on. You are loving from a place that was shaped long before that relationship even showed up. You hear me? And until you understand that, you will keep repeating the same patterns with different people. Okay? So let's start by defining attachment styles and what they are and how they show up. Attachment styles are the emotional patterns you and I develop very early on in life that influence how we connect, how we trust, how we feel, and how we show up in relationships. So these patterns usually start in childhood, from the way we were loved, we were comforted, we were responded to, the way love was expressed in our homes. And without realizing it, those early experiences create a blueprint for how we love as adults. This doesn't mean your parents were bad people. It just means that our environments then shaped how we experience love, closeness, trust, and desire right now. And that blueprint usually shows up later in our romantic relationships. So really, why does this conversation today matter? Or why does this conversation about attachment styles matter today? Because if you don't understand your attachment style, you will continue to misinterpret what is happening in your relationship. You may think you're just too emotional, or you keep choosing the wrong people, or you're just not meant for love. But really, something is happening. And that is what we call your attachment style is trying to protect you based on old experiences. Or your nervous system at this point is responding to past wounds, not just the present moment. And once you understand that, something else will begin to shift. You'll stop blaming yourself. You'll start to understand yourself. Okay? All right, so that's the background. Now, there are 4 main attachment styles. And these 4 main attachment styles, as I talk through this, you may start to see and recognize yourself in them. So I want you to pay really close attention and figure out where you fall. So I will start with the healthiest of them all. This is secure attachment. This is the healthiest attachment style. People with secure attachment, they generally feel comfortable with closeness and intimacy. They're okay being emotionally connected to someone else, and they don't feel threatened, or they don't even feel like they're losing themselves in the process. They're able to communicate their needs very well. They can say what they want, what they feel, what they need, what is working, what is not working, without feeling like the relationship will even fall apart because of it. They trust their partners, not in a naive way, but in a grounded, calm way. They believe love can be stable, supportive, and mutual, and they don't live with that constant fear of abandonment, because that will keep them overthinking every message, every silence, or even any small disagreement in the relationship. Securely attached people also understand that relationships conflict in relationship is normal. They understand that a disagreement here and there does not automatically mean that the relationship is over. They are able to connect, repair, and even move forward with very little to no conflict. Most of the time, people with secure attachment were people that were loved well, were responded well when they were children. They were given reassurance when they needed it. Someone showed up for them. And over time, they've learned that connection is safe, love is available, and they are worthy of care. The good and the bad news is that if you didn't live if you didn't live in such an environment, it can be hard to have this kind of attachment. But this is not something you either have or don't have forever. It can be developed later in life through healing, self-awareness, or even through experiencing healthy relationships that show you a different way of loving and being loved. So in other words, even if your past shaped how you attach now, it does not have to define your future. Okay, that is the secure attachment. Then we have people with anxious attachment style. And these are people that often carry a deep fear of being abandoned in relationships. They love deeply, they care deeply, they invest emotionally in the relationship. But then there is that fear or anxiety that stays with them that says, what if they leave? What if I'm not good enough? What if I lose this? So they may find themselves constantly needing some reassurance from their partners. They may overthink texts. They read deeply into tones. They replay conversations in their heads over and over again. Or sometimes they feel uneasy when communication suddenly slows down. Sometimes people with this kind of attachment can feel like a small disagreement is the end of this relationship. And because of that fear, they try very hard to keep the relationship secure, sometimes by overgiving, over explaining, or over accommodating other people. But the important thing that I want you to understand, people with this type of attachment, they're not too much. They're often people who learned early in life that love is very inconsistent. Maybe affection was there sometimes and sometimes it was not. Maybe attention was there sometimes it was not. Maybe they experienced moments of, people being close to them and sometimes there was that emotional absence. So it was very inconsistent. And when that happens as a child or to a child, their nervous system learns a certain patterns that they need to hold on tightly because they might lose this thing that they're holding on anytime. So as adults, their hearts are often searching for stability while their nervous system is still bracing for loss. Again, the beautiful thing with awareness, with healing, and relationships that are healthy, that provide that emotional safety, people with this type of attachment can learn to feel secure. They can learn that love does not have to feel, inconsistent. They can learn that they don't have to fight so hard to keep love because healthy love chooses to stay. The third attachment is what we call the avoidant attachment. That is quite different. So instead of fearing abandonment for this type of attachment, people with this type of attachment, they feel uncomfortable with too much closeness. They value their own independence. They even pride themselves on being self-sufficient. They can handle things on their own and they don't need anyone. But really underneath that independence is always a fear and a learned belief that depending on others is very risky. So when relationships start getting emotionally close, sometimes they pull back. They even withdraw. They even avoid deep conversations because what? They don't want to be there. They may keep parts of themselves guarded because their partners are coming too close to them. They sometimes feel like they're emotionally drained by that. And it's not because they don't care. It's because for them, vulnerability feels very unfamiliar or even overwhelming. And many people with this type of attachment grew up in environments where emotional needs were not consistently met. They were dismissed, their vulnerability was discouraged, they learned that expressing their needs did not matter, and you will disappoint people if you expressed your needs. So their nervous system adapted in the only way it knew how. You know what? It's safer to just rely on myself, to just be myself. So as adults, they may still desire love and connection, but they want to protect themselves and hearts by keeping a certain emotional distance. The healing journey for someone with avoidant attachment has quite a learning curve. And it means that you have to discover environments that are safe for you, that you're not losing your personal freedom, and knowing that both of those things can coexist. There is hope there. The last attachment style is what we call fearful-avoidant. And this one can feel very confusing for the person experiencing it, especially because it carries both anxious and avoidant patterns at the same time. A person with this type of attachment style may deeply desire love, yes, and connection, but at the same time, they may feel afraid of it. And so relationships can feel like an emotional push and pull. They may want closeness one moment and then suddenly they feel overwhelmed and pull away the next. They may crave reassurance and connection, but also struggle to trust it when it shows up. This attachment style often develops when early relationships contained both love and fear, love and pain. For example, when caregivers were sometimes nurturing, but other times unpredictable or unemotionally unsafe, this you develop this type of attachment. You learn, something very confusing about love. You learn that the person I need for safety is also the person that can be very unsafe at the same time. And when that happens, love and fear become tangled together. So you don't know the difference. So as adults, relationships can feel both very desirable and also threatening at the same time. But again, this is not a permanent identity. These are just patterns. They are adaptations. This is ways the ways the mind and the body learn to survive earlier on. And through healing, self-awareness, through therapy, through faith, healthy relationships, people can begin moving towards what we now call secure attachment, which simply means you're learning that love can be safe, steady, and mutual. That is very helpful and very encouraging. Now, understanding your attachment style is powerful, but here's the most important part of the episode that I really want you to hear. Attachment styles are not permanent identities. They're patterns, and patterns can change. I mean, you can get into healing relationships. You can become more self aware. You can do the emotional work. You can learn boundaries. And all of these things can help you move towards secure attachment or secure relationships. And that is why healing matters. Because when you heal the way you love, or your love patterns, or how you show up in love, or your attachment style, guess what? You stop chasing unavailable people. You stop feeling afraid of healthy love. You stop repeating the same painful patterns in relationships. And instead, you begin to create relationships that are safe, that are steady, and feel mutually, that are mutual. So if you're listening today, here are a few questions I want you to ask yourself today. 1. Do I fear being abandoned in relationships? 2. Do I struggle to trust love when it is offered to me? 3. Do I find myself needing constant reassurance that someone is not going to leave? Or maybe it's the opposite. Do you pull away when someone starts getting too close? Do you struggle to fully open up or allow someone else to really know you? Do you keep finding yourself in the same relationship dynamics again and again, even with different people? Those are just a few questions on my notes, but I want you to take a moment and be honest with yourself, because these questions and more are not meant to shame you. They're meant to give you awareness. And awareness, as I said, is powerful. When you know what you're dealing with, you can start working on it. So you cannot change a pattern or something you cannot even see. So awareness is really powerful. Once you start to recognize it, once you can name it, you're already taking the first step towards healing and toward creating healthy relationships for yourself in the future. And from a faith perspective, I want you to remember something. God created us for connection, remember. That is the reason why God created men and women. Healthy connection, safe love, mutual love. But sometimes our past experiences distort how we receive love. And that is why such healing conversations matters, because when God heals the heart, he also reshapes the way we relate to others. He created you and I for connection. It is not in his plan that you have these attachment styles that are not secure. So if you've ever wondered why relationships feel harder for you than they seem for others, or why you keep finding yourself in the same relationship dynamics, I hope this episode helps. And I hope you understand that your attachment styles may be part of the answer. And the beautiful thing is this, as I said, they are not your identities. Once you understand that they are patterns, you can begin to change them. You can learn new ways of connecting. You can heal your wounds. You can absolutely create the kind of love that feels peaceful instead of painful. All right, my friend. So I wanted you to learn of the 4 attachment styles. And my goal for you is that you move from all these other 3 attachment styles that are not healthy to a secure attachment style. All right, that's it for today, my friend. If this conversation helped you understand yourself a little more, I want you to share this episode with somebody else who might need it. And remember, healing the way you love is one of the most powerful ways to break unhealthy cycles. So until next time, keep healing, keep getting aware of your attachment styles, and keep showing up for yourself. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.